Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at Opus Magnum. This is a 2017 puzzle slash programming game from Zachtronics, which is a company that pretty much makes only programming slash puzzle games, with the exception of the solitaire game that was a free mini game inside one of their games that then they sold separately. SHENZHEN I uh, was the game that had the solitaire game on it. So then they sold SHENZHEN Solitaire, I believe is what it's called. So in this one, it's more closer to Alchemy as far as what you're doing. Now, a little setup here is everything by default is set up to what it should be normally 1080p, English, full screen, all of that. The audio sounds fine. I don't know if I'm really going to need a keyboard or if I can just play all with the mouse. But this text for me is a little too small. I'm looking at a monitor that's 10 feet away. It's a big old, it's probably a 50-inch TV. Yeah, I don't even know how big it is, but it's far enough away that text for a lot of games is a little too small to read. I can read it. It says finally this setup is getting close to usable, but honestly, the way you lower the resolution here is not actually changing the resolution at all anyways. It is just simply changing the frame inside the resolution of the window and scaling things up higher. So bringing it down to 16 by 900 actually just makes the text bigger. If I bring it down to 1366 by 768, it just takes up the full entirety of the screen. And yeah, I think that's what we want. Otherwise you're just going to get basically borders, at least in the menu, and I imagine you would get the same. We may play with this and turn it back to 1080p just to check later on, when we actually get into the level. So first things first is we'll do the prologue, and then we will have, looks like 6 chapters after it. Although maybe it's just 5 chapters and maybe a bonus level or maybe nothing. Over here it looks like we've got a extra thing here, I guess. It says the journal, and then a puzzle editor, and then Steam Workshop, and then a warning. So it's just telling me straight to not do this yet, so I won't read this. It's interesting where it said click anywhere to begin, and then you potentially are not guided that much to click on this to move forward. There's quite a lot going on here, where it would make a lot more sense if there was even a generic fade out that said, hey, this is your options button, hey, this is an extras menu, hey, this is your chapters button, we'd like you to click here to start. Alright. Transmutation. So alchemy access is restricted to graduate level alchemy engineering students and faculty only. Any exceptions must be approved by the chancellor. Keep your student alchemist permit and sigil with you at all times. While in the lab, no food or drink is permitted in the lab. That's just by default always the rule. Do not sit or lean on transmutation engines or the related components. Please keep the area clean for everyone else. That means you. And does that say Anarchist? Anataeus? Anataeus? I want to say Atticus, but that's not what it is. It's Anataeus. Lesson 1, Introduction. So, yeah, it is taking on the feel of a kind of more modern society in which alchemy exists. And I guess if you look at this background of, I guess this is the Imperial University, you're seeing lighting, which is probably electric or magical. You're seeing a very large, well-kept gardens, a big old statue. This doesn't look too different from like St. Basilica Square in the Pope, where the Pope is. Yeah. So it does feel like we are somewhere around the 1400s or later, not in a completely unrelatable time frame or world. Lesson 1 introduction. Hindley Servin, I'm amazed you put off learning how to use the transmutation engine for so long. Click to advance the story. Histograms and leaderboards are not available for tutorial puzzles. Now this, like most programming puzzle games, means that we will get scores, and that will be compared, I assume, to online players as far as the amount of time you take, maybe the number of steps you take, almost certainly, and the number of parts you take, almost certainly. And then we could come back and try and improve upon our solutions later on if we so choose. And you have some very basic computer stuff, and you rename, copy, delete, which you really don't see that kind of stuff in most games. So Anataeus Vaya is apparently the character you're playing as, and you didn't get to choose your picture or anything like that. I was concentrating on working by hand, you know that. Anataeus, we're about to graduate. I know. That's why I need you to summarize all this for me as fast as you can. Click to solve this puzzle to continue. Okay. New solution 1. Open. Yeah, it is weird. And I imagine a lot of these Zachtronics games are kind of like this, where it is definitely more like you're working with computer software than playing a video game, which usually optimizes its interfaces better and doesn't use the same terminology as something like a word processor would. So, yeah, there's something definitely different in the feeling of this, which, just looking at the screen first and foremost, I imagine at some point this is going to zoom out, and that this would be fairly hard to reproduce on a TV to make it quite big enough in later puzzles, and it would be really hard to reproduce this on something like a cell phone screen, which is rather small. So we're going to automate the process of alchemy by basically creating molecules, is what I would describe them as, but I think they're better described as alchemy alignment patterns. These are regents. They're the input materials for doing alchemy. This is a product. Your job as an alchemist is build machines that combine regents into useful products. To complete a puzzle, build all products, press the play button below to start the transmutation engine. This is the instruction ray. Instructions tell a machine what parts. Tell a machine's parts what to do. Okay. And I guess we just have all of this text is just here. I can't right click it and get rid of it. I can't drag it away. So number 1 is going to grab, so this component here is going to grab this. It's going to rotate here. It's going to rotate here. And then it's going to reset after that point and just start all over again. And then after it resets, it's going to reset drops any held atoms and resets to its initial position, length, and position. Initial rotation. So then it drops the gem here. Then it's going to grab one, go here, and then reset again. Which doesn't quite make the most sense. And then number 2, which is this one, is going to grab here, and then it's going to rotate here, and then here, and then it's going to extend to here, and then it's going to reset. Which, again, this doesn't make sense. It feels like it should extend at some point. This one should. What is the glyph of calcification? This glyph of calcification transmutes any of the 4 cardinal elements, air, fire, water, and earth, into neutral salt. And this is elemental fire. And this is, let's see, burner fuel. This is weird because it kind of seems like this product, a burner fuel, is what we're trying to create. And it seems like it's going to do that in some weird way. Why is it repeating? If it was just a case of, yeah, let's just hit play and see what happens. Or step. Let's step. Step 1 happens, they grabbed. This one grabbed that. Then it takes it there. And it takes it there. And then it seems like at this point the instructions are kind of changing. Because now it's undoing and everything it just did. Okay. And so now this one has picked up a second one, and this one should have just picked up 1, 2. Okay, they bump and rotate each other. That's the thing I didn't understand until this point. And this did turn this into salt, and this symbol, I guess, is just salt. And I guess we are just creating the element next to the product, not actually on top of the product. And when they get next to each other, they just immediately fuse. And at that point, since they're fused and connected, which I have to just assume the elements always fuse and connect together, they're one product, and so this one extension puts it here. I'm actually learning quite a lot more than it might seem, because there's a lot of different ways this could have worked, and getting the basics down pat so you absolutely know what the expected outcome is going to be based on your actions is very important. And so that created the product, and at that point you've succeeded, but there's a couple of reset things. And it seems like it just keeps on going and going and going. And you have the number of products, and we're supposed to make 6 of them. And it costs 9G. And There was some other metrics there. Understand so far? Yeah, that took me probably longer. So that cost 90 gold, let's just call it gold, took 70 cycles, and used an area of 12. So those will be our 3 metric as far as what the histograms and leaderboards will be. Histograms just being charts. It would be kind of weird if it actually is gold, because assuming alchemy actually works in this universe, the very first thing Alchemist would want to do, and probably would learn to do, is how to transmute lead into gold. Making gold not a good rare mineral at that point to use as a financial backer. Gold is a pretty bad financial backer anyways. It's much more useful in electronics and practical uses than just hoarding it in coin form. So it says, understand so far? Of course, I knew this part was easy. That's why I never worried about it. I count you as a friend, Anataeus, but sometimes you carry your genius alchemist act a little too far. Act? Question mark. So, and then you just return to menu. Lesson arms. Seems like to me we're gonna get told a story while playing Opus Magnum that might be somewhat in the way of the actual gameplay if you're just here to play the game. And if you're not here to play the game and you want the story, you're probably going to be sorely disappointed. You probably could just run over here and click open and skip the dialogue if you wanted to. The 7 Billion Humans game, which is the sequel to a better human resources machine. Yeah, let's talk about human resources machine. 7 Billion Humans was kind of a bad sequel. Human resources machine barely gave you any storyline, and it was just comedic effect storyline in between each level, and I think that's about as much as you really want. There could be a danger here we get so much story that we don't even have that much as far as puzzles. And while I'm calling this a programming game, it's programming, but it's not programming anything close to a language. It's closer to something like a computer controlled machine, a CNC type machine, something you would program like a laser cutter or a computer controlled router, something like that, with very unique programming language concepts for movements and such. So let's take the first important part, the arm. I understand what's next. Wait, don't rush ahead. Let me go through the material. You need to see this. I can just double click here. Mechanisms are 20 Gs. Place the arm, setting the rotation and length so that the gripper is over the regent. Then add instructions to the instruction tray below to make picking up the regent and move it to the product output. So in this one, it is just going to be a case of this is going to take this here, this is going to take this here. Interestingly, it seems like because this rotates, it's been programmed to rotate not to this point, but to this, just this point. Whereas this one has been told to rotate twice. Seems like it's always 60 degrees, but if you extend the arm 60 degrees, reduces the number of positions. Right. So, how do we do this? We probably start with this. Drop instructions? Nope. Yeah, I could see where a keyboard would be very helpful because there are definitely keys of use. And we probably don't want to crash into this, but heck, for the fun of it, let's do it. Rotate. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you have any options. It's always going to be 1/6 of the direction. So 3/6 just by doing basic math would do 180, and then drop, and then let's just go full circle there. And I guess products and cycles and area all get calculated later. But I wouldn't be surprised if I could reduce the area by simply having this turned back and only do a 180 back the way it came, instead of going at a full 360. Although mechanically, if there was an actual motor here, I kind of think that you probably would do better going in circles than stopping and then coming back and stopping and coming back. Let's see if this works. And I think this is going to work, and we should probably speed things up, so I'm just going to hit play. Grabs it, puts it down, goes 360. Notice how it's speeding up quite a bit. Your machine has successfully created the desired products. Man. Let's see, that was area 43. Let's double click this time and experiment here. And that and that. That means it will go this way and then come back. Instead of doing a full 360. And see, yes, that is an area of 30 instead of 43. So that is a point we want to optimize to get higher scores on the leaderboards. That being said, I don't think in this tutorial there would have been any way to reduce the number of costs or the number of cycles. Right, so arms pick up and move elemental proxies around the surface of the transmutation engine. Right, and you control their behavior with instructions. Yes, of course. Of course. Yeah. And I guess I can't complain about these tutorials being a little too simplistic, because frankly, if you don't get everything and understand everything by the end of this tutorial, you're probably doomed to fail at this game fairly quickly and rage quit. In fact, these kinds of programming games have a high chance of failure and rage quitting even at that, unless of course you have experience programming and have that background. Fortunately for me, I was classically educated to be a programmer, so I do have some of that background. Alright, moving forward. In some cases you'll want the arm to rotate what it's gripping. You mean as opposed to the arm itself rotating. That's right, in those cases you'll use pivot instructions. Alright. So, place the arm below, then add the instructions to make it pick up the regent and move it to the product output. So, put that there. Interesting, you have this box drawing ability. Oddly, though, I thought I could move the starting point. It doesn't seem like it wants to move the starting point. Okay, yes you can, but you have to click the little box there. Okay. So, grab instructions and then rotate 1, which would be here. And then another one. Which would probably not be there, but maybe. And then probably at that point you have to pivot it twice, then drop, and then back. And back, and not that one, that one. Let's see if that works. Nope. Interesting. It was only one pivot needed. Also, so I've just overshot everything. In fact, the instructions were exactly the same. The only difference was the starting spot for the second one. Sneaky, but we will want to keep an eye out to see if that stays, if that trick gets done again. All very straightforward and simple. How nice that this is so easy for you. Why, how long did it take you to learn all this? Let's just keep going. Yeah. Next we have pistons. A piston arm is a special kind of arm that can extend and retract. And presumably there are instructions that control the piston. That's right, I'll demonstrate. So, in that very first tutorial puzzle, which is kind of weird that they had us do that first tutorial puzzle, because that was more complicated than the second tutorial puzzle. We had one piston arm, I suppose, and that's, or at least we should have had just one piston arm, and that would have explained some of my confusion too. I feel like that first tutorial puzzle tried to show you a lot of too much to start off with and confused it. Place piston arm below, then add instructions to make it pick up the regent and move it to the product output. Okay. The reset instruction will make the arm drop any held atoms and reset to its initial rotation length and position. In this lesson, the drop instruction is disabled. You must use the reset instruction. Okay. So we take this, rotate this, and then let's see. I guess you want to probably grab, and then you probably want to retract. Retract so you use less of an area. Then you probably want to rotate once that way, which other attraction would be this. See, this might be one of those cases where we use more cycles to potentially have less of an area used. And until we start getting out of the tutorial levels, that probably won't really matter too much. Let's just go ahead and retract a second time. And or rotate the second time. And then reset this down here. And you probably aren't adding anything to the cycles until you were as long as the end of this arrow, I would guess. So we'll just step through this. Yeah, 2 rotations, and then a reset. And then the reset, we'll just put that right back where it was. And we're having to wait for the other layer. Each step is a cycle, so theoretically if I could get these to do something helpful while this one was resetting, I could take less time. And maybe there will be a future puzzle like that, but at the current moment there's really not a way in which you could easily program this to pick up another one and put it here and double up the number of salts going to this output, since it might have enough free time to do that. It seems like there's 4 instructions empty on number 1, and to do his instructions takes 6, so there's probably not enough room to do that now. And when you hit play, it just continues where you were. It doesn't reset, which that's probably nice. You probably have to hit stop then play if you want to start from the beginning, which you probably don't need to. I see piston arms can reach areas you can't with a normal arm. That's what makes them so useful. They cost a little more than regular arms though. And I can use the reset instructions. I frankly would like to think of it more as a revert instruction than reset. I don't know why in my mind those aren't the exact same word, but generally I think a reset command would just erase all of the currently running memory inside of its instructions, as if you just hit the reset button. It just would be a hard reset, and whereas a revert would remember what position it was in and go back to where it was originally. Yeah, mechanically, if you were to reset an arm and it was not at a specific point, it would just assume that when it booted up that second time that that was the specific point it should start at. Of course, I think Zachtronics is not a native English speaking company to start with, so I don't want to get too pedantic on terminology. Let's see. I can use reset instructions to make an arm return to its initial state from wherever it is. That's convenient. Just remember the rest. The reset instruction takes the same amount of time it would take to issue those individual instructions. Well, yes, of course it will. Of course. So there might be a more efficient way to get back to the start point. Let's see. Lesson tracks. What's next? Next we have tracks, which are like paths you can place on the board. It's easier to show you. Just a fairly generic conversation there. I will say I'm already kind of not liking how little of the screen is really taken up with the puzzle. And yes, I know I lowered the resolution, so there might have been a little bit more screen real estate, but there's a lot going on here, some of which probably could be depicted a little bit smaller or just not shown immediately until you hit the play button. But then you also run into the danger of potentially having to double click on an object to get to a code programming window and then put all the code programming for that specific object in a window and then close that window. And this is keeping everything up front so you can always see it and know what's going on. But if these puzzles get too complicated, you still may not know what's going on. We also seem to have several different hint things here that we can't even click on yet. Yeah, at some point here we're going to get away from the basic elementals of alchemy: earth, air, fire, water, where fire is not really an element as more as a chemical reaction. Earth is not really a compound because it's a collection of compounds. Water is H2O, and air in general is O2, oxygen, with bits of nitrogen and other things. In a lot of ways, air is a lot like Earth. It's a combination. And then Mars, and does that say Vitae? No clue there. And then you start getting to lead, tin, iron, copper, silver, and gold, and several symbols here. Lead and tin lead to quicksilver. Iron and tin might be like something like steel. Seems like we're gonna reveal some new elements later. It's a nice picture though. And what this does tell you is you're probably not going to get insane, like there can't be 100 elements here. Whereas there are some mix and match games out there where you do end up making hundreds of different combined elements and components. Create a track between the reagent and the product. Place the arm on the track and add instructions to make it pick up the reagent and move it to the product outlet. Okay, so this is a track, and how do you do this? You just drag it. Okay, now is there any point here needing the plus and minus to be somewhere else? Because otherwise, yeah, it seems like you can do either. Okay. You have to be careful still. Alright, well, pick it up and then rotate it probably 2. And then move instruction to the negative direction, and then just reset. So yeah, several instructions here. Let's just step through them and see how that works. First step, everybody picks one up. Everybody else moves towards the positive direction. I guess maybe I needed to move to the negative direction twice. So So I probably didn't program this quite right. Yep, I put it in the wrong place. Squeeze another one in. It'll take the same amount of time as everything else. And see, this is taking up 27 as far as the area. And I kind of would like to see a highlighting so where I could count each of these squares of the 27 squares being used, hexagons being used, but I pretty much believe them. I see when you place an arm on the track, the arm can move forward and backward along the path. Tracks can be quite powerful, but I'm still learning how to use them effectively in my designs. Could you put multiple arms on a single track? I think so. I never thought to try. I'll have to experiment later. And it seems like we are probably going to do 3 more and then we'll be done with the prologue, and then I wouldn't be super upset if they started to throw us fairly well into the deep end and just give us some real challenges. And I expect we'll probably get some bit of optimization or new element in each of the chapters, which again would imply that we're not going to run into a whole bunch of alchemy elements. To perform transmutations, we use glyphs. For example, say I want to calcify an element. You place a glyph of calcification on the board and move the element you want to calcify over it. So it's funny because they're talking about alchemy and transmutation, but in reality, everything we've seen in this game doesn't really have anything to do with alchemy as much as it is just assembling core elements, components. If you had told me this, if you had reskinned this to be a chemistry game and you were just taking oxygen and nitrogen and putting it together, then it would have felt exactly the same so far. Anataeus, I mean, yes. That's correct, but at least let me get through the explanation first. I got all the explanation I needed. Use the piston arm and a glyph of calcification to turn the reagent, a fire atom, into the product, a salt atom, and move it to the product output. Okay. So, here. We'll do this. And then, what is the best way to do this? You just stick it there, I guess. And then we'll just tell it to grab, to retract, to rotate 1, rotate 2, and then reset. And we'll see if that works. Okay, we didn't need the 2 rotations. That's something I'm gonna have to get used to. It's once again almost the exact same instructions, just that you're rotating a different direction. I suspect we probably won't run into more than 4 or 5 glyphs in the entire game, though. Or we'll have to create our own glyphs through some kind of sub-mechanic that would explain things better. It's quite fast, this glyph. Yes, welcome to modern alchemical engineering. How many transmutations are available as glyphs? Most of the common ones so far. There's ongoing research to develop more, which you would know about if you paid any attention to the recent developments in your field. Lessons 4, bonding, or next lesson, bonding. I don't know why I thought it was lesson 4. I didn't know what close to number 4. This must be the glyph of bonding. It is. To use it, actually, why don't you show me how it works? Seems that's the way things are going here. Very well. So even the writers of the story that we're going through here basically ran out of attention. Use 2 arms and the glyph of bonding to bond 2 salt atoms together and move them to the product output. Okay. So this is a glyph of bonding, and we'll have to pay attention to that going forward. So you start with number 1 doing that to grab and then rotate back, and then let's see, do we have to drop it or will it just automatically bond? We'll have to find that out. So we grab it, we rotate. Is that all that one really needs to do? Grab this one, and then rotate. What I want to see what would happen is if both tried to rotate at the exact same time. So I'm going to step through this and just see what happens here. So 3 and 4 are going to grab. They're going to rotate. They automatically get bonded. You don't have to drop things. Now that it's bonded, theoretically this is going to want to swing here and this is going to want to swing here. Is that going to stretch the thing and break it? Error. Bound atoms may not be moved in 2 different directions at once. So we found an error. Okay. Which I think we just need a pivot and a reset here and a reset here, and we'll see how this works. Bonds it, then this guy, since he's at the reset, lets go, or just doesn't care that this guy took it from him. Then the pivot is there. And there is an efficiency to this puzzle that might be easy to miss, in that I could double the amount of code here and have them take turns, because this one is going to now have to go back 2 more steps to get to this. Meanwhile, this one could be working his magic as picking up an item and putting it here. I think. Yeah, because see, this one's just not doing anything, where this could have been there at that point. Although at that point, then this one would have nothing to do. So maybe it really wouldn't save you any time. But it kind of feels like it would. but it would be more code and more complicated. Certainly. But we've got it, so we'll just hit play. And again, it does feel more like you're doing chemical chemistry bonding than actual alchemy, which I don't know. It's kind of impossible to establish a real science around alchemy, considering it isn't real science. The transmutation engine makes alchemical engineering far simpler. You could have been using it the whole time, but I'm glad I did things the hard way for so long. I hope you're not like this in real life too, Anataeus. But this is a real life. Alright. Stabilized water, I think, is our first real challenge, and I imagine the first one that will be scored. I think that's everything you need to know. Use the transmutation engine to use the transmutation engine effectively. I'll make one more product to make sure I get it. Alright. Panning and scrolling. The building tray, parts tray, instruction trays can be panned with right click anywhere within them and dragging your mouse. If you have a mouse with a scroll wheel, you can also use it to vertically scroll through the parts and instruction trays. At this point, I think you pretty much should just assume everybody has a mouse with a scroll wheel. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. From now on, you place products and regions on your own. They are at the top of your toolbox. So, yeah. You can just mouse wheel down here. You have Glyph of Calcification, Glyph of Equilibrium. You have this marker for ZRG, the Glyph of Equilibrium. For aesthetic considerations. Multi-bonding. Okay. So we want stabilized water. How many do we want, though? Because I feel like you could do something like this and probably do something fairly fancy. But this is 30 gold versus this being 20 gold, but then you need two of them. So you could save some gold. But is there a benefit to that? Really? And we need a glyph of bonding. It's also a glyph of unbonding. Is this crazy, potentially, to do it this way? How come we have a elemental water and elemental water? Let's see, this costs 0.2. So far I've spent 40 gold to have this arm and this bonding. And let's see. Is there really logic to this? Or are we just moving around in a silly fashion? I think we're just moving around in a silly fashion. I think it would make a lot more sense to do something like this. You can't start with a glyph here, so put one here. This second one was fairly easy. Grab, rotate, and then reset. He really throws us in the deep end a little too much, though. This is showing us a lot of extra things that you're not really needing to see or deal with. There you go. The next first step instructions here would be grab, and then I guess rotate once, and then I think rotate twice, and then I think just a reset. I think that's all we kind of need. Let's see if this works. Nope, you went the wrong way. We'll just replace those pieces and try again. Why did the glyph of calcification not work? Okay. Still doesn't, I think, change too much. Because then all we would want to do is change this to a piston arm and then add an extend instruction. See if that works. Yes, but no. It will work, but we'll need to see. It shows all arms are kept in sync. See how that works. That works absolutely the wrong way. I needed to do the other piston. Okay. And then we'll just set that to that point. And I think we've got it. Point here is to try and use the least amount of area and least number of cycles and the least cost. And it seems like of cycles, I am at 35, whereas some people have gotten it down to, well, seems like 5. That's an interesting thought. Of cost, I cost quite a bit. Apparently you can record GIFs. And of area, I use less than average. So we could think about a way of, like, let's just stop here. Could we do this in less cycles? I think you could definitely do this in less cycles, because what you could do is you could have more arms grabbing pieces and putting them in place faster. And you could just spend more cost, more gold, to do less cycles. You could have one arm, one piston arm, pick up everything to place everything, and that would reduce the cost quite a bit. But at the cost of cycles. And then area, in particular, ghost atoms. Let's see what this final one does. Nope, just brings up that. Kind of wish you could bring up the, what does this say? Does that say certified or Centralia? Is that, seems like it's just a logo. Yeah, I don't see a way you could reduce the amount of area too much. You could get rid of one arm, you could get rid of one source of atoms, and that would reduce the area by 2. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much as you could do. These mechanisms here for this specific use, probably not that useful. 6 arms and grippers as more expensive really isn't even that much more expensive. Could potentially have grabbed 6 items and just waited in line to drop another item at any point. Yeah. And how do you get out of here? Do you just have to play again? Yeah. I guess. Yeah, I feel like there's a chance that there's some cheaters here that potentially got this down to 5 as far as the amount of area. That seems fairly difficult to do, although very believable. You could get it down to like 7 or 6 to get the number of cycles down to what looks like 5. 40, 30, 20, 10. Yeah, the tick marks don't really make sense, do they? If this is 50, this would have to be 40, this would have to be 30, this would have to be 20. Where's the 10? And it's just telling us our best scores. Cost-wise, I definitely could get it down. Interestingly here, while it gives you your histograms, it doesn't seem like there's really a leaderboard that's loading up here. Well, I kind of would have expected that amongst all players, not just friends. So what are your plans after you graduate? I think I'll be a head alchemist for one of the August houses. That's bold. Right out of school? Why not? True enough, no ambition could be too great for you. And yourself? I like it here. I think I'll stick around and hopefully become a professor. You do seem to have an affinity for teaching. Think so? Well then, may each of us realize his Opus Magnum. I think Opus means like play or something, and Magnum, of course, means big, relatively speaking. The biggest work. Opus Magnum. I've always found that to be a rather pretentious term, but I agree with the sentiment at least. Why are you laughing? Anataeus Vaya found something pretentious. Tell me more. And so the background changes, and it is now House Van Tassen. So let's, before we wrap up, hop in here into this and see if we can pull up. Well, I guess what we would have to do is you have to come over here, set the options from the main menu. And let's see, we've got new dialogue here. Here from a new character that we'll deal with in the next recording. Let's just see what that looks like when you're at 1080p. In all fairness, this does look better. Like, it is taking up less of the screen, certainly, at a higher resolution. So that, but then you're just going to constantly have this trade-off, and this still is a little too difficult for me to read, particularly if I would have to hover over something. So I'm going to stick with the lower resolution to make things look bigger. Trick, but yeah, it definitely does feel a little squished. And I guess that goes to show why they are only supporting about 3 resolutions when, in all practicality, most games would support quite a bit more. And yeah, you can turn off the histograms, but at this point it doesn't show, doesn't really show anything other than your solutions. And then apparently you have to beat the game before you can even see the top percentile as far as other players, it seems like. So yeah, seems like you get about 10 puzzles per chapter. So we're looking at 50, maybe 60 puzzles in total. We're going to get a bit of story here. It doesn't... Oh yeah, they still are going to warn us away from this. So we don't really want to click on that. I imagine there is a bit of post-game content that fans of the game have made. Alright, well that was about an hour, and for a puzzle game that's probably about the right time for a recording. That's going to be it for this one. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.